I like mods for games, but I also like it when these mods turn into games themselves. It's one of the many reasons why we take the initiative to see how games will turn out in the video game market. We look at them, we analyze them, we follow up on them, and then we learn from them. This time we follow up on the games we looked at between July and September of 2015 to see how they evolved, the new content, the community, the problems with the games, and if they were addressed or not. Have they improved with time, or have they become worse? Let's take a look. The Red Solstice is based off the Warcraft 3 map series Night of the Dead with a sci-fi twist to it. The overall game is awesome, just like the Warcraft 3 maps. The developers even played Night of the Dead back in the day, so of course they're going to stay true to that. And there's even multiple maps you can play on. It's very replayable. They did add a new weapon and one new map, and helmets similar to Team Fortress 2 hats. That's locked away in the DLC, so you don't have that in the base game. It looks like there's a very small group of people continuing to play this game. The overall daily numbers are in the double digits. However, the multiplayer mode is completely empty, so I was a bit off in this analysis. I figured these people would be big fans of the Warcraft 3 maps who would join up on TeamSpeak and play this game, but it looks like the people still playing are just in it for the single player. This game is already dead. The advantage of the Warcraft 3 maps back in the day is that everyone on Battle.net had access to it, and they can try it out by joining the custom games. This game would be like buying a copy of those Warcraft 3 maps for $20, so the player base was inherently limited from the start, and then there's the limited exposure it had to begin with due to the lack of coverage from big publications. GameSpot had their review, but not IGN. I'm starting to think if this concept was turned into a first-person shooter, it would be much more popular. But we're already at this point. This game gives you a taste of Warcraft 3 custom maps and what they were all about, but this was a multiplayer game at its core, and even though you can play by yourself with bots that you have some control over, it doesn't do the game justice. You need a full 8-player team. Satellite Reign was advertised as a real-time, class-based strategy game set in an open world, but the open world they have feels empty. You're going from one objective to another, and there's not much you can do between them. I got bored of the game very quickly. It does have a few things that work great, and I can see why some people would enjoy it, but it seems to appeal to a niche that I'm just not a part of. No DLC has been released, unless you count the goodies being sold as DLC that don't add any content to the game. I noticed a spike in the player base that happened in December, where the population more than doubled, but that only lasted for 2 months. And looking through the news updates related to the game, I couldn't figure out what caused it. They have released a few patches to fix any bugs in the game, so it's great to hear the developer is supporting it, but their game is still the same bland mission objectives, the same stupid AI, and the same clunky controls. I figured the game itself was fairly limited in its design. The exposure for the game was fairly limited as well. I don't even remember how I heard of it in the first place. It certainly got my attention, but it failed to keep it. It was an average release of an average game. Soma is basically sci-fi amnesia, somewhere between The Dark Descent and A Machine for Pigs gameplay-wise. Simpler puzzles, smaller areas for the puzzles, and less scary overall. It's a good game in its own right, but it doesn't keep you on edge like The Dark Descent did. So what happened to it? Although some of the bigger Let's Players such as Markiplier have done this game, other notable ones such as PewDiePie have not, so that's a factor in the outcome. It did have lots of Let's Plays like I thought it would, but the bigger names on YouTube are the huge driving force for exposure. Frictional Games made a blog post about the whole thing a few months after launch. They needed to sell around 280,000 copies in order to get their money back from the development, and it looks like they have. So we'll definitely be seeing a new game from them in the future, but the lukewarm reception is making them wonder what they did wrong. The one thing that stood out for them was that the game falls into two genres, sci-fi and horror, and this made the game feel too sci-fi for someone looking for a pure horror experience, and vice versa. So their idea to address the problem is to have a primary focus on one genre. They have not announced what their new game will be, but whatever it is they decide to make, they will stay in one genre. The modding for the game never took off either, despite having much greater modding support than with The Dark Descent. There's been a few mods on moddb.com and the Steam Workshop, but nothing very complicated. If the game itself doesn't make a huge splash, neither will the mods. It's still a good single-player experience in its own right, but it doesn't keep you on edge and make you fear the monsters, and the puzzles are simpler and take place in a much smaller area. I guess when you set the standard too high, it becomes difficult to reach it again. These are the games I looked at between July and September of 2015. Next time, we'll follow up on the games between October and December. Thanks for watching!